Good. You're good, Matthias.
It's working. Hi, everyone. We'd like to start. Before I introduce our writer, I would like to. Come, my sheet. Shouldn't touch that. Before I introduce our reader, I would like to acknowledge that we are standing on the unceded ancestral lands of the Chakwaya Vitam, the people of Chakwayanga, whose present-day descendants are the citizens of the Fernandinho Papalian Band of Mission Indians. They have been here for millennia before we came and will forever call this place home. Historical Pavian territory encompasses the Santa Clarita Valley, the San Fernando Valley, Simi Valley, and Antelope Valley, roughly a third of Los Angeles County. The name Tatavian comes from Serrano word meaning people facing the sun. So it's really a pleasure to introduce Jos Charles, who is a young American poet who has published three wonderful books, and I feel like I've spent 2 weeks kind of really inhabiting this book, so it's nice to get to do that. And some of you have as well. Jos won several poetry prizes. I won't do that. I won't race through them. But also won the Monique Wittig Writers Scholarship because I really like Monique Wittig. If you don't know her, you should. The first book is called Safe Space. The second book, which we read in our class, is Field, and that's a book that kind of creates its own vocabulary, which combines Middle English and then pure invention, internet, shorthand, text speak, and kind of creates its own spatial universe, and does so with language, and it doesn't do it necessarily with, the difference between denotative and connotative, right? Denotative language is like the word chair for a chair. It doesn't do that with denotative language. It does that partially through connotative language, right, that we associate, but it really takes the stuff of language, and especially the stuff of English in its earlier incarnations, to build something new that also connects to something very old. It's quite a pleasure. The most recent book, A Year and Other Poems, was published last year, and is quite different from Field. It has a very kind of minimalist, sculpted quality. It has elements of the pastoral, which are I think there in all the work, and the lyric, but it is really working on time and space, and it's sort of the center poem, A Year, is the majority of that book, and it unfolds over a year, but it's not the calendar year, right? It's a different year. It's a durational year, a felt year. It kind of looks at the space of time, right? And which to me is a very different thing than the kind of hard time, right? Clock time. But it also looks at the time of different spaces, and that that time-space knot, right? That is so essential to our understanding of the universe, gets reconfigured here in beautiful, lyrical, and actually quite playful and humorous ways, which I'm getting more and more of a sense of, because I think we always think everything has to be so serious, but it doesn't. It's my pleasure to welcome Jos Charles.
Thank you, Matthias, and thank you everyone for being here, and thank you for the folks I visited in class earlier, and for the people in what's it called? The internet. It's like Ethernet, ether, like no. Okay, internet. Okay. I'm gonna read some from A Year and Other Poems, and then I'm gonna read some newer work. I haven't really decided exactly what I'm gonna read. I probably shouldn't say that. I'm thinking about being here, being in California, and I was thinking about it a lot when writing. So I think I'll maybe weave a little bit through this place. I was born in Southern California, grew up here. I spent 2 years of my life in Arizona, but aside from that, I spent my whole life here. Desert hills all aflame, the old hopes, an oak shook through a screen, our separate smoke caught in the same ascent. Months I move in you. I was trying to think, I guess, it was a sad year. It was 2016 that I wrote this over. And it was like I had just finished my MFA and was moving from Arizona back to California. When I left Arizona, there was this, like I was in Tucson and there was this hill where like all the rich people lived, and they love hills. And it was on fire. And then I, moved back to California and California was on fire. And there seemed to be something about ash and smoke and fire and things in the air, something in the air. Suddenly, David Lynch. He's always doing. I guess I did it too. That was from January. This is just like a very Long Beach portrait. I was walking around, well, I guess it feels Long Beach to me, but I guess it was Tucson. But this kind of, it feels like a very, very Long Beach thing. Walked, enigma of enigma, past each house. Saw a crow pick its earth, the only earth. A man's hand unasks my back. Heard a pool deflate. Monday, you would be 28. Open door, electric fan in it. Yeah, I'm thinking like there's a sense of like loss. There was someone who I was close to who passed this year, and I was kind of in grief in this way, but there was also this sense of like, school is weird. And like you make connections and friends, and then it's going to end, and then it ends. And of course, you stay in touch in various ways. But there's like suddenly everything felt really empty, kind of overnight. And there's this way of just like walking around and seeing scenes, and they all felt very empty, and yet it like now bore all this weight, and so everything felt so weighted. And I wanted these kind of poems that like had the most bare like tent poles in the ground to drape, these little bits of grief over. Monday it would be 28. To see if the images can bear it. Whole as expanse of breath, of leaven, as knife to dough, and down the bookstore neighborhood and those, quote, rough streets, clerk says, past 8th Street, lights sudden coming on. In Long Beach, there's this bookstore, Acre of Books. It was the first bookstore I remember going to. And like right when I moved back to Long Beach, they had like torn it down, but they did this like, it's such like a perverse state thing to do. They like left the front of it up and then built like a high rise on top of it, you know, as like a memoriam. And it was like, no, just like tear it down if you're gonna do it, you know. Zombified it into this weird thing. Anyway, so that was partially this down the bookstore, but then also, you know, people always say rough streets who work in shops who don't live there. I'd like to read something that I'm going to read all of May, I think. I wrote this section for a friend who I love very much. You see what no one sees. Hair, cedar on a shore. Your hair, galleries of feather by feather, the sun. Something else that I really got into after Field, where it's like I wanted everything to be really new. Like I wanted a book unlike a book I'd seen. I wanted a book that I wanted to read, this kind of thing. Then I jumped real hard the other way, where it's like, what is it about the old images that speak still, you know? So like this whole poem just came like I saw this person's hair in the sun and it was beautiful, you know? That's a poem, right? I have this sort of generous capacity. Having fled the garden, the inevitable envelops you, Marie, clung occult to the other side of a fence. In you, anthologies of meadow clinging. This is very much a Tucson poem. And it was like that kind of gig economy, sure. It didn't have a lot of work. So it's doing, you know, internet work. Gone mad, for weeks I linger, 110 degrees, and who would dare to leave a room? Tops flood the floor green. Awake, absenting the here I make. A man asks me to faint, asked to eat a peach on screen. I write for days, my love is like a raven or the flood, and there is never not a flood. Balms and heads of honeycomb, an architect in every room. A book is a margin I go to put holly to the lip, a proximity to what one is not, to bury yourself to what morrow allows, not sorrow, everything against it. You touch, long, irretrievable, beside you, again, me, again, in the dark of our certainty, I hold like a stone, and even you, I turn my head to 1,000 possible things gone. It is all I hold now in spring. was applying, when I got back to Long Beach, I was applying for jobs, and it was sort of 2016, this like time in which like all the coffee shops in Long Beach had like pride flags, and then I'd go in for interviews, and they like wouldn't talk to me. Yeah. And so there was this one in particular where like the person was like, "Oh yeah. We're not interviewing right now. Can you come back in a couple hours?" And so I came back, and they're like, "Oh, we're still in the interview. Can you come back in a couple hours?" And then came back in a couple hours, and then she was like, "Oh, can you just wait at the table over here?" And like I don't know, like 6-8 hours into the day, like and I waited there for over an hour, and I'm like seeing other people come in who she's interviewing. It's like, oh, I get it, she's not going to interview me. So then I got very sad, and then I asked for the bathroom key, and then they gave me a man's key, and then I was like, yeah, I get it. So then I went to the bathroom and cried, and then I wrote this sometime later. Flags ask out, pride whines from the terrace, interview at 6, interview at 8. A woman waiting unholds your form, a man's bathroom I'm always in, empty summer homes by the sea. And something about scale, right? Like Southern California. What is a trans woman getting a job at a coffee shop or not? Look where we are. And all these empty houses. October rose up, the coastline obstructing itself. I lost something in every room they got in. How, your dreams. That was just a night terror poem, There's this place in Long Beach. It's called Harvey Milk Plaza. I think it's called Equality Plaza now. And it was a place where a lot of unhoused people would reside, and it had like beautiful citrus trees and some benches, that one could sleep on. And then I think that year, 2016, the city decided to, quote unquote, renovate it. And these the terrifying blue tarps and chain link fence went up, and everyone was displaced yet again. And then when it came back down, it was like a big flat slab of concrete with no trees and no benches, and rebranded as Equality Plaza. Perpetual hair falls to the floor. Harpies make a nest there. No book whose margin isn't illumined with carmine, carbon, gold. When you get back, they will say, we tore down a house and built a statue of a house. T.S. was talking about Paul de Man's allegories of reading. And I wrote this one poem thinking like, this just tells you how to read the whole book, like this is the whole thing. So I'll read it, so that way you have the whole thing. No new word having fed every word, being only one word, Ram, her two eyes in the leaves. Then I will read December because it's December. That's how that works. Let's see, maybe I'll say a few things about December before I read it. There's a brief little stop in Paris, thinking about Paul Celan at Pont Merbeau, and fascists lighting fires in the streets. Then returning home and like lived in a second floor apartment, and like, you know, one day I woke up to noise and there was just like construction workers in a tree outside my window. So it's, yeah, that's a good poem. Sorry about that. And then after that, thinking about grief, and then another fire that was happening and ash was all in the air. These are some of the things you'll see. They're in the poem. All that turns is a wheel. The sky is ashen and a wheel that is turning as we cross a bridge of stone. It is not yet noon in the port where I live. Like a poem that is after you, Paul at Pont Merbeau. We touch a bridge and therefore it's stone. To touch a stone is forever to touch a bridge. In the street they are starting fires. It warms even us. What was crossed out is not the same as what was never written down. Mountains mind even us. Looked at last at the branch that plates your face. Symptom-like weakling gardener to each. Love, referentless. From the roof of the apartment, branches break their pits, seedless. Within it, men in trees sing. In the enigma of a shadow, of a window left open for wind to leave. In the thought that cannot account for form, and having spent thought, we encounter form only. In the distance between the hole of a stone and a dove within it. Of all we have imagined, and we have imagined such distances, what is known and not known. You touch the stone, it could be any stone I live on. It is falling ash in Santa Ana, falling in your year, irrecoverably in the evening, holding hands, ourselves into the evening. We wept a quiet English the day contained. Such silence, sudden now, in the clearing. A tarp chains the lot of our speech. Sunday, no women washing at the washing stones. The past is only the only mutable thing. A lone tinker in the waves swims. I'll read maybe one more from here. To me, I was thinking of this, the past is the only mutable thing. Like, the whole book is really just like a year of grieving, you know? And that's kind of what grief is. It's like a kind of time travel, you know? Trying to rewrite the past in some kind of way. Or that's what it felt like to me anyways. And the writing provided some kind of encounter with that for me. Or I wanted the writing to hold something of that process that would have happened with or without the writing. A song. This is a real Long Beach poem. There's just there's like a good hedge, and there's a finch in it, and I was like, oh, that's tight. And then I put my finger in the hole where the finch went, and I was like, okay, I gotta stop doing what I'm doing and write a poem. Putting my finger through the hole the finch climbed through, a man, the very hose in his hand, a fruit carton props the door. There is no question of before, only pathless when you walk before, or I walk before, meadow-like, God, shadow, what we show of it. Now I'm going to read some sonnets. How are we all doing? Yeah? Nice. You have the energy, I go. No, I have energy. I got Pulitzer. So I've been, I like sonnets. They're funny. I think I've been thinking, you know, like that weird racist way that people teach haiku, you know, that's like just like the syllables, and then you like get no history, no context, no encounter. I feel like sometimes in a such less stakes way, like this happens with the sonnet too, of like one doesn't actually really like think or like encounter or get taught what the sonnet is oriented to or what it can hold or what it is tended to hold. And instead you get this like prescribed rhyme scheme and syllable count and so on, you know? And so I just got interested, I guess, in just like reading a lot of sonnets and then thinking of, or whatever, I don't know what a lot is, for me a lot. And trying to just think like, what are they facing? Or what have they tended to face? Or like what becomes enabled past the technique or fulfilled despite it or beyond it. So they deal with the you a lot, the reader a lot. I'm thinking of it as like a way of addressing a lot of people in my life and times in my life where I wanted a really stable you to address or tell something to. So maybe I'll like try and frame each one in some kind of way this way. Some of them are more public and some more maybe direct to someone. This is a very public poem though, I feel like it's when I moved to Long Beach again, and I was sort of just walking around and saying Long Beachy things, and feeling some kind of way about poetry. Or like what I like what poetry can build, or like what writing can build. You know, like a temple, somewhere to reside. And it's like not escape, it's something that leads you right back here into the world, ideally. But doesn't make any claim to have like changed it, just maybe one's relation or orientation to it. I had made my way to the waters of my youth with my hair, my shoelace, my handsome and weak-kneed prayer. Paradise versus paradise for us here. I was the wickedest daughter of the wickedest generation of the wickedest empire the world had seen. Each door opened to a palace of glass. Of last night's wreck remains, a melon half, a wave measured, washed nearly to my feet. It will not be nonviolent. Our story will be a story of water. This is a similar kind of like broad scene setting sort of poem. We'd loved each other then, made careers of loving, loved ourselves and each other to death. Every floor was a bed, and we'd pine and we'd pine. We were a child, like a child with a balloon or a camera, like a camera a man holds, like a broom handle. We held the day, like a woman holding his hand, like a camera, like a child, the sun cast away.